Hi, I am Rhonda Black, Professor of Special Education at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. This presentation is titled Presto Chango, Understanding Puberty. So the objectives are to become familiar with adolescent growth and development, to understand the phases and tasks of adolescence, and to understand reproductive health of adolescents and young adults with disabilities, and this AYA terminology will be used throughout to refer to adolescents and young adults with disabilities. So there are like 4 phases of adolescence: early, middle, late, and young adult. There are different developmental tasks within each of these phases. So early, middle, and late, there are phases, tasks, and growth in cognitive development, from concrete to advanced decision-making skills. Independence. There is less interest in parental activities, and finally, a re-acceptance of parental advice. Independence and identity are intertwined. There's also changes in body image, where there is an intense focus on wanting to fit in, and finally, the completion of pubertal growth. There's a lot of changes with respect to peers, intense relationships with peers for support, typically same gender early on, and then moving towards the peer group becoming less important and spending more time in sharing and intimate relationships. Early on, identity, which is tied to independence, is all of a sudden that need for privacy, the belief that you're always on, that the adolescent is always on stage, and figuring out, who am I? This changes over time to a clearer sense of identity in late adolescence. So early adolescence, very rapid pubertal changes. Girls will develop about 1 to 2 years earlier than boys. This is when this independence-dependence struggle begins, where children are differentiating themselves from their parents and starting to form their own identity. There is an important focus on peer groups at this time. Being able to have friends is vitally important, and it's important for students with disabilities as well. Many of our children with disabilities don't have a strong peer group. They may have an adult who is a one-on-one aide, and they may have family, but they don't really have those friendships with same-sex peers. So this is very important, and something to focus on is developing a network of friends. There's also the struggle between independence and dependence. And at this phase, children are wanting to be very independent, but at the same time, they are still dependent on the parents. So it may look something like, can you drive me to the mall, but don't let anybody see me with you? Like, get out of sight. I don't want you here. I don't want to be associated with you, but I still need you to cater to my wants. So in middle adolescence, there are more intense feelings. So less interest in parents, more peer time, perhaps more conflict in the home, starting of dating activities, but also extracurricular activities that the parents are not as involved in. The identity that one is developing becomes a little more realistic, but also do the risk-taking behaviors. Now, one thing to think of is that even though children with disabilities, adolescents and young adults, may be slightly behind cognitively, physically, they are very likely to be going through the same changes as their neurotypical peers. So the bonding dynamics change, decreased interest in parents, and search for new social bonds. And having a close group of friends is very important. It's also important in mitigating risk. So if someone is not isolated and feels like they have that support network, they are less likely to engage in behaviors that would make them more vulnerable. Late adolescence, identity is becoming established. The thoughts and feelings might be better expressed, a little less concerned with body image, and less involved with the larger peer group, and a more serious relationship perhaps with one person. So body image. Adolescents often grapple with body image, focusing on physical appearance. Because of this heightened focus or preoccupation on the physical appearance, a lot of it has to do with social pressures. I want to be accepted. The importance of peers accepting me is more important than ever. So again, wanting to belong, wanting to be accepted by peers is incredibly important at this time, and we must recognize that. Here's an example of going from early adolescence to late adolescence, with Justin Bieber as our example. Look at these changes in image, in identity, and see how this goes across from early adolescence to late adolescence. So some of the physical changes. Adolescence is a time of rapid growth and development physically and psychosocially. Adolescents and young adults with disabilities and peers have the same important health priorities. This means having sexual health as a priority, along with mental health and primary care. That means seeing an OBGYN for girls and talking about puberty and development for boys. Do not assume, because the child has a disability, that these things are not important. So adolescents must prioritize their well-being with sexual health, mental health, and primary care. One thing that may be of consideration is menstruation management. Depending on the needs of the young woman, you might consult with a doctor about menstrual management through hormone treatment. For some young women with extensive support needs, having menstruation every month may be a very difficult task, especially those who need help with hygiene and personal care. There also may be, we know that these hormone fluctuations can also affect behavior. It's very difficult for someone who cannot communicate verbally to express what's happening. So this may be a time to talk to your physician about that. Also, adolescents with disabilities may encounter unique reproductive health challenges. A lot of individuals with disabilities may have cognitive delays, but there also might be some accompanying physical disabilities that go along with it. So this may need a more tailored support and resources. So don't be afraid to talk about this with your primary care physician. Okay, that was physical development. Now cognitive development. In adolescence, there's a big, huge shift going from concrete thought to formal operational. Some of you may recognize Piaget here. Now, some individuals may have developmental delays that may delay this concrete moving to formal operations by a few years. So maybe it doesn't happen at 11 to 12 years, maybe it happens later. But the primary thing to think of here is that during the concrete operational phase, logical reasoning is applied to objects that can be seen and heard. In formal operational, individuals can start thinking about potential events like planning and carrying through on goals, or abstract ideas like social justice, fairness, some of those more abstract ideas. So what does this mean? If you are talking about puberty to your son or daughter, you may need to be very concrete about this. So for example, talking in metaphors or talking around the subject is not going to help. So if you talk about Aunt Flo that comes to visit when you are, embarking on womanhood, that is not going to explain what is happening to your daughter's body. It needs to be more clear and more direct that all people at your age and older experience, or all women at your age and older experience menstruation, which means you are going to see blood once a month. It doesn't mean anything bad is happening to you. It is not a disease. It's not an injury. It is normal and it is natural. Please come to me and tell me it's nothing to be embarrassed about. And then showing very concretely how to handle sexual hygiene. So while we're moving to this idealistic world, while we're moving to these abstract thoughts, it's like, dude, I have so many ideas that would revolutionize life on Earth and bring awesomeness to mankind. But let's also bring it back to reality. How about you just take out the garbage and do the dishes? The other thing to think of too is this change in cognition, moving from more concrete to abstract, does not just happen in a day. In fact, it vacillates. It goes back and forth. So there may be this abstract thought with, it seems very clear and very reasoned out, and then 30 minutes later, something that needs to be explained completely concretely. Because this is a change in development, it's going to go back and forth. So I think the more you know what's going on, the easier it is to handle, instead of getting frustrated like, I know he understood this just an hour ago. Why can't he now understand why? He understood X. So understanding how this happens and what's happening can help you be a better listener and more responsive and more supportive. This is another one, Erickson, and they talk about psychosocial development and especially moral development. And these two phases right here are the ones that are concerned with adolescence: identity and intimacy. So, identity, he calls it identity versus role confusion, saying that if we support identity development, the young person is less likely to have role confusion. So the task at this age is to form a good, solid identity. Part of that is differentiating and becoming independent. Some of that is beginning to look at the future. Who am I going to be? Who am I now? Who do I want to be? And forming their own identity based on their own experiences and explorations, which means the more experiences, different people, different ideas, the more you are supporting identity development. Isolation and being closed off does not support identity development. Expanding experiences, expanding horizons does. So intimacy versus isolation. So this is when adolescents are learning to share themselves more intimately with others. Sometimes this may mean just having that one or two good, close friends that you can share your hopes, your dreams with. People that you know accept you unconditionally. There may also be sexual attraction. So it doesn't mean that everyone you're forming a close relationship with is going to be a sexual partner. Both of these are needed. It's the need for close interpersonal relationships. So relationships that lead towards longer term commitments and establishing care within a relationship. Those are the developmental tasks at this point in time. So things like compromise, things like listening, things like sometimes having to give up what you want because you are listening to the needs of others. So David Elkind, this guy really had, this psychologist, student of Piaget's, really nailed adolescence. So he said there's 4 things that are big happening in adolescent development, especially psychosocial development. The first one is adolescent egocentrism. So we know that children, 3, 4-year-old children, are very egocentric. It's all about me and what they want. Adolescents are also overly concerned with their own thoughts and feelings. You know, this is happening to me. Everything is centered about what things outside are happening to me right now. One of these is the imaginary audience, where adolescents believe that others are watching them constantly. So this may be, oh, I have a zit. Everybody sees that zit. They're all looking at it. They're all focusing on it, and they're all judging me. Where what's really happening is that all adolescents are so concerned with themselves, they probably don't even see that zit because they're so worried about their own. But nevertheless, understanding that this is going on inside may help you understand some of the drama. So if you put yourself in the shoes of someone who believes that everybody sees everything you do and constantly watching and judging, think about how that might affect your perception of events and, yes, contribute to the drama. The personal fable is where adolescents believe that their experiences and feelings are unique. No one has ever experienced this. No one has ever had a broken heart like I have. No one. So one of the things is understanding that that's where the adolescent is coming from. Don't discount that. Don't say, oh, get over it already. Understand that's where they're coming from. And if you can show that other people do have experiences like this. Probably the most dangerous one is this illusion of invulnerability. Adolescents think that misfortune only happens to others. It's like, oh, if I don't wear a helmet while I'm skateboarding, I'm not going to fall on my head and get traumatic brain injury. That only happens, that guy wasn't careful. He was reckless. That won't happen to me. It can happen to you. Another one is only bad girls get pregnant. I'm in love. This is my own experience and nobody has ever felt like this. And so I won't get pregnant. So adding a little touch of reality into these thought processes can be very important. It doesn't necessarily have to be the scared straight approach, but it can be an introduction of reality with maybe people that the young person knows, people like them. Another thing about this too is peers or someone closer in age is going to have more of an effect in talking about relationships and sexuality than parents. So parents are responsible for talking about these things. But when it comes to parents can talk about the physiology, they can talk about, sexual health, like sexual hygiene. But when it comes to some of the social emotional parts, it may be better to find someone from your circle of support, a sibling, a cousin, or someone closer to the young person's age to talk about some of the relationship aspects, the social aspects of relationships. So this is a typical middle school. Oh my heavens, they must be looking at me. Oh, is there something on my face? What happened? So one of the things I think that works against young people with disabilities are some of the ideas we have in society. So one of these ideas is to restrict and prevent sexual expression. Another idea is that individuals with disabilities are innocent and childlike, and they aren't even thinking those thoughts. And also thinking that relationships are inappropriate. We need to break ourselves out of these mindsets to approach the young person to talk about healthy relationships. What these attitudes do is actually make the young person more vulnerable because we are not talking about and addressing sexuality. So when it comes to the sexual behavior of adolescents and young adults with disabilities, there was a large-scale study comparing young people with disabilities to those without. And there was absolutely no difference between those with disabilities now in ever having sex, their age at the first sexual experience, sexual debut, sexual orientation, and pregnancy. There was a big difference in the likelihood of abuse and the likelihood of an unhealthy relationship, which goes back to the previous slide. We have to change our mindset because we do not want abusive situations and we do not want unhealthy relationships for our sons and daughters. So these are some of the factors that increase vulnerability to abuse. So the perpetrator thinking that the victim either won't tell or won't be believed. So if there are communication difficulties, they may believe that they can't tell, that the victim can't tell. Or they may believe that if they are a person in authority, that the victim won't tell because I told you so. Don't tell. So making sure that young people with disabilities can tell that they know the words and they know how to report if someone touches them inappropriately. That is one of the best things that we can do for young people with disabilities. Give them the words, give them the motions, the actions, so that they can tell. Another one, this intense desire to be accepted, plus believing things that that more capable other tells you, plus a lack of experience. All of those make someone more vulnerable. So if you are isolated and you want to belong so badly, you will do anything to belong. And that isn't just people with disabilities. When we see some of these cases of spousal abuse, one of the things we see is isolation and lack of a peer group to talk to. This other one, lack of experience, not having peers to talk to about relationships makes one more vulnerable. Most of us, probably when we were teens, we talked to our friends and we said, oh, then he didn't call me. And your friend said, that is not okay. If he doesn't call you and he waits 2 weeks and then calls again and expects just to come over, that is not okay. So we learn about these social norms from experience and from talking to that friend group. It's kind of like the unwritten rules of dating, the hidden curriculum of dating and relationships we learn from our friends. Another thing that makes one vulnerable to abuse is overprotection. Wrapping children in this bubble wrap, overprotecting them, not talking about relationships, not talking about things like being taken advantage of, or are your friends really friends? Is it a reciprocal friendship, or are they taking advantage of you? The more we don't talk, wrap kids in a bubble, don't let them see, don't let them hear, it actually makes them more vulnerable. They need to have this experience and exposure. So, general recommendations: listen, show interest and concern. Don't judge, just listen. Calm down. Don't react, just listen. Demonstrate trust. Show that you do trust your young person. Avoid power struggles. Sometimes that might mean walking away for a minute. Have clear expectations, but remain flexible. So clear expectations, but not hard and fast rules that you'll never be able to implement in a consistent manner. Treat comments seriously. If they tell you that something's happening, don't dismiss it and think, oh, they're just making it up. That's something they saw on TV. Treat comments seriously. Make resources available to your son and daughter. And that may be resource of another person. They may not want to talk to mom and dad about dating. So it may be a person that you make available, or depending on your son or daughter's disability, it may be some printed resources. Videos, there's a lot of training videos on the internet about healthy relationships and sexuality. And so, in conclusion, adolescents and young adults with disabilities and peers have the same important health priorities while going through puberty and adolescence. Just because someone may have a developmental delay cognitively does not mean they are delayed in puberty. Most individuals with intellectual disabilities will go through puberty at the same time as their non-disabled peers. There is individual variations, but their bodies are maturing, even if the cognitive aspects are slightly delayed. And sexual health is top health priority in all adolescents, along with mental health and primary care. Thank you so much for your time. Mahalo.